In the most divisive of times, the great debates rage on. Who was the best Batman? Was the book truly better than the movie? Did Han shoot first? Nerds with Opinions will seek to answer life's greatest questions.
Hello there, fellow nerds. You are listening to Nerds with Opinions, episode number 142. As always, I'm your host, Matt Holtman. Today on the podcast, I'm going to be reviewing the Bad Blood premium live event from WWE that just happened. It's a Marks with Opinions episode. I'm talking about the whole entire PLE from front to back, rating matches, rating the show as a whole, here today on Nerds with Opinions. Hello there, Marks, specifically. Since we're doing a Marks with Opinions episode, we're talking wrestling. No guest today, just me, and I am going to be reviewing the Bad Blood pay-per-view. I was really jacked for this to be happening again after so many years because I'm going to be honest, I think it's not just nostalgia. There's a big nostalgia factor in it, but I think it's a bummer that WWE got away from doing their kind of legendary and well-known pay-per-views. Obviously, they stuck with the big four, and they should stick with those. But I thought it was a bummer when they started making sort of arbitrary names for new pay-per-views, or taking classic pay-per-views, like for instance, like No Way Out, and then making it, having like a cool branding like that, and then taking it giving it a title that's just purely about a match stipulation. So No Way Out becoming Elimination Chamber. And then also the problem with that is, yes, okay, so the big crux of that pay-per-view is that you have an Elimination Chamber match in it. The issue with that, though, is the fact that then you're doing Elimination Chamber matches like every year, and it loses its kind of like that special thing about it. Hell in a Cell became a pay-per-view, and I think that's a little bit of a bummer when you have a fan base that has so much connection to like these classic pay-per-views like Armageddon and No Mercy, and over the last couple years, we've been seeing a return of more of those classic pay-per-views, particularly in NXT, which I love that they're using that as a platform to be like, let's bring back a bunch of fun like WCW pay-per-views. And it's like, yeah, you own the rights to this, and it's going to, especially with the old school fans, that nostalgia is going to work. But I do think that it's like you built up a lot of equity into that branding and then just cut it out to something that's kind of not as meaningful. So I love that they brought back Bad Blood. So, all that to say, I actually really enjoyed this. I love they brought back Bad Blood. I love that they used the theme of that pay-per-view as, okay, these were all like blood feuds. And I also love that they, to really like harken back to the last Bad Blood, they had a Hell in a Cell match. And this, in my opinion, is how you should present Hell in a Cell matches. They should be only on special occasions. It shouldn't be like a branded pay-per-view name. I keep saying pay-per-view. I know they changed the term for that. Excuse me. PLEs, premium live events. I'm an old school fan. Pay-per-view is kind of stuck in me, but I'll try my best. PLEs. It starts to, when you have those, yearly branded PLEs, you have to end up having so many Hell in a Cell matches that it starts to lose how special that match should be and how rare it should be. And because you've built it up to like, this is one of the most violent matches, it takes years off of people's careers. It shouldn't be something that we're having so flippantly. And I'm hoping that they're getting back to that with Triple H in charge, because I think he gets like the severity of the Hell in a Cell match as it applies to a rivalry, where this is like the end of a rivalry. It shouldn't be just something that's just kind of were randomly doing. And I think that the match that they had in the Hell in a Cell for this Bad Blood pay-per-view definitely justified that. So let's start right off the top of the bat, because that was the opening match, which I do have to give a little bit of a critique on the fact that I do not think this should have been anything but the main event. I was disappointed in the fact that it was not the main event. This is the longest running singular rivalry that's been going on in WWE. I mean, you could make an argument that yes, like Cody and the Bloodline has been going on, but that's new Bloodline, and yes, that kind of picked up. But Cody's had some like that's kind of still been a thorn in his side. But then he's went off and had these like little mini rivalries with like an AJ Styles and whatnot. Whereas like CM Punk and Drew McIntyre have really only been focusing on each other since Royal Rumble. It's been in this entire year, and it's been one of the most epic storylines they've had. And so this was a perfect avenue for it, Hell in a Cell. And I really just feel like the way that match went down and the fact that it was in Hell in a Cell, that should have trumped. I get it. They had big stars with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns in the main event match, and especially considering what happened at the end of it, I know that's why that decision was made. I still think that the Hell in a Cell match should have been in the end, just thematically, and especially since you were paying homage to that first Hell in a Cell match with Shawn and The Undertaker. I digress, though. I think that CM Punk and Drew McIntyre did such a good job that they kind of gave the sort of hey, follow that, guys, by going first and having such an amazing match. So let's talk about it. CM Punk defeated Drew McIntyre by pinfall in a Hell in a Cell match. 31 minutes and 25 seconds. It was brutal, and there was amazing storytelling. Honestly, one of the more violent and brutal Hell in a Cell matches we've had in a long time. I think that the last one that comes to mind that was like that really, I think, stood out to me just because they've become a little more commonplace was Seth and Cody. That was an incredible Hell in a Cell match, and it was justified because where that rivalry was going. I even really enjoyed Edge and Finn Balor at WrestleMania 39. I was there live for that. And that was really, really intense. But I think this match between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre it was the right rivalry for it. And I really like that they weren't shackled creatively, and they drew blood, so they got color, a lot of blood. And there was just really fun, interesting spots. It was really brutal. Like both these guys took an absolute freaking beating, and they did such a good job at, emotional storytelling. And it was old school in that regard. It felt like a Hell in a Cell match that you'd see between, kind of basically Attitude Era through Ruthless Aggression. It felt like that era of Hell in a Cell, not at all like PG era Hell in a Cell. And I think that's for the better. There was just better storytelling because they got to utilize a bit more violence. And shout out to both of these guys for putting their bodies through unspeakable punishment. I will say I think the right guy won. I do think the right guy won in terms of the baby face going on to the next thing. I don't think that Drew loses any stock by taking the L here. And I think it was a really good way to end their rivalry. I honestly, I'm just waiting for whenever, give it a couple years, but when these guys come back together, ooh, it's going to be good. It's going to be damn good. And I can't wait for that. But I think the right guy won. I'm excited to see them go off and do their own thing. It seems like they're both pretty banged up. I don't know how, they even had CM Punk kind of right off into the sunset for a little while. I think he's nursing some injuries from that match. And I know Drew McIntyre like split his head open really bad in that match. So I'm assuming we're not going to see either of these guys for a little bit on TV. And then it seems like also probably the next thing for CM Punk would be the Seth Rollins rivalry, which kind of took a back seat to making this one happen, and I'm so glad it did. But I think it is time to go there, and I love that. I love that for both those guys. So this match, amazing opener. I'm gonna give it 5 stars. 5 stars flat. It was absolutely amazing. I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I'm not gonna knock it because it was an opening match. It should have been the main event, but it was incredible, absolutely incredible. Best Hell in a Cell match that I've seen in a while, and it stands out as kind of out of the few like really standout Hell in a Cell matches of the PG era for sure. In the next match, Nia Jax defeated Bayley by pinfall to retain her women's championship. I think that their first match was better. This was still pretty good. There was a little bit of them not being completely compatible in terms of timing and whatnot. And so in that regard, like I said, it wasn't quite as tight as their prior match, but it was still really good. I don't know if they'll do another one. I wouldn't mind seeing another one, but certainly the looming presence of Tiffany Stratton, possibly cashing in, really became interesting, and that was part of the involvement here. I'm a huge Bayley fan. I think if you've listened to this podcast and listened to any of these pay-per-view or PLE reviews, that that. So of course I would have loved it if Bayley won, but I think that to keep Nia, with momentum as this monster heel, it's totally fine to have her, keep the title. And I also think that probably it makes sense that, to keep this fun storyline going with the Money in the Bank, that, her and Tiffany are connected together, and that there's always this looming threat of, is Tiffany actually going to cash in or just stay her lackey? So in that regard, I think it totally works. I'm going to give this a 3.75. It was pretty good, but not great. But I still definitely enjoyed it. In the next match, Damian Priest defeated Finn Balor in a singles match. I liked this. I think they've been doing great stuff with Damian Priest, and I love the ex-Judgment Day members having a rivalry against old school Judgment Day. And, these two in particular, Finn being the one that put the screws to Damian Priest, this made total sense. I'm curious to see where both of these guys go, though. I really liked the tease that, Balor might pull one over on him once the other Judgment Day guys got involved. But now that Priest won, it kind of makes me wonder where exactly, is there enough pavement left on the road for this to keep going? I'm not real sure, unless maybe they need to have a big blow-off match of some sort. But yeah, I think there's a little more room for the Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan rivalry. But especially how their match ended. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the Priest and Balor, I don't know. I feel like that maybe doesn't have as long of a shelf life. So I'd be curious to see, like, do they continue that? If I didn't think they were going to go in a very different direction with Survivor Series War Games, it'd be fun if they could put together some sort of like War Games team. But at the very least, like, I feel like you could have a traditional Survivor Series tag and then maybe make it like intergender. That could be really fun. And maybe Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley can have, some other allies be involved. I think something like that could be cool. But I'm just curious to see where they're going to go with it. But I like this match. I'm going to give it a 4.25. In the following match, Rhea Ripley defeated Liv Morgan by disqualification. So Liv retained her title in a match for the Women's World title where Dominic Mysterio was suspended above the ringside area in a shark cage. This was fun and silly. I liked the stipulation. Like, Dirty Dom really draws a lot of heat, and him, like being scared and everything, and then at one point, like falling out of the cage and getting beat up like a piñata by Rhea Ripley. Just fun spots. Just fun spots. And I really like this rivalry. I would love to see more of this. And I will say my only complaint was the finish. I was fine with Raquel Rodriguez coming back and then being a heel and seemingly joining the Judgment Day and aligning herself with Liv Morgan, but because of that, there was definitely a botch with like the referee. And it was a little clunky. The finish was a little clunky. Not necessarily everybody's fault, but ended up being clunky. I am going to give this also a 3.75. I really enjoyed it, but I think that finish getting messed up was a little bit of a bummer. Let's see here. Before we talk about the main event, we should probably talk about the segment where they really built this up. The Triple H was going to make this big announcement. There was clearly a title belt being hidden, and they introduced this Crown Jewel Championship, which is, oh boy. And basically the top champions from each brand will face off at Crown Jewel, and then that winner will be the Crown Jewel champion. I think everybody was hoping this was going to be a women's mid-card title, so that was disappointing because I'm assuming they've already done like a Saudi-specific title one time that Braun Strowman won that you never saw again after he won it. So I'm assuming this is going to be another one of these. It's just clearly something that like the Saudi royalty just basically paid for. It seemed a little lame, and it was kind of a gaudy looking belt, and so that was a bit disappointing. The best part of this was the fact that Gunther came out, basically saying like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to be the one to win that." Cut a promo on Bill Goldberg, who was there in the audience because they were in Atlanta. And it insulted him to the point of Bill hopped the fence, and there's very clearly a tease for, a potential Gunther Bill Goldberg match, which I would love, because Goldberg has talked many, many times about how he wanted to have a proper retirement match, and Vince wouldn't accommodate that, and even like flirted around with maybe going to AEW, couldn't get a deal done. It seems like since they showed him on TV that they must have some sort of deal worked out with him, and so you gotta think that that's gonna maybe be a WrestleMania match. And I think Gunther would be a fun final match for Goldberg, like just a quick match. Gunther's a big guy, but he can work with anybody. I love it. I think that's a fun idea, especially, the other kind of like dream match that Gunther had, which I think is not as likely to happen anytime soon for good reason, was Brock Lesnar. But I think, like, Goldberg's a really good replacement in that regard. I think that could just be a short big man match. I definitely think that Goldberg can lose, especially if it's his retirement match. But I liked the tease, and I think people want to see that. I want to see it. And then Sami Zayn got involved because he was going to be having a match with Gunther that next week on Raw. He subsequently lost that match. So yeah, I really liked all that. Wasn't a super fan of the showing off the new belt. That's kind of doesn't mean a whole lot. But then that led into the main event where Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns defeated the Bloodline. I'm going to say the new Bloodline by pinfall in a tag match. And that was Solo and Jacob Fatu. This had a lot of outside interference. Great match up until that point. Like, so many false finishes, really amazing spots. It's everything that you expect out of a Cody Rhodes or Roman Reigns match. I really liked the sort of uneasy allies kind of angle on this. And the outside interference, which you knew was going to happen from the new Bloodline, what that built into with the return of Jimmy Uso, realigning himself with Roman Reigns and helping Roman and Cody Rhodes get the win, was amazing. And then, of course, the show ends with The Rock making his return in a very cryptic fashion. Clearly, it wasn't. He was pissed about something, but it wasn't clear whether he's mad at Cody or he's mad at Roman or both of them. I would assume probably both of them. But then he didn't, really acknowledge that he was actively still a part of the Bloodline, or new Bloodline, with Solo, Fatu, and the Tongan brothers. So interesting. I get it. You get The Rock, you got Roman, you have Cody Rhodes, you have the biggest box office draws. I still think the Hell in a Cell should have headlined. The match itself, though, was absolutely incredible. I marked out really, 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 really hard for the return of particularly Jimmy. I kind of expected The Rock to show up. It was still really cool. Marked out for it. But the Jimmy thing legitimately shocked me. I didn't think he was coming back yet from injury. And so obviously then it builds up so much fun stuff of, like, this old Bloodline versus a new Bloodline thing. Like, you gotta get Jay back. And then that's going to be a fun storytelling thing because, he went off on his own. And so Roman's going to have to, kind of, be humble and, ask for his help. And then I'm fully expecting Sami Zayn to, get back involved in this as the honorary Sami Uso. So lots of fun stuff on the horizon. The match itself, I'm going to give 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely incredible what you expect out of these, main event guys. Jacob Fatu is incredible to watch. Cody Rhodes took a huge splash bump onto the tables outside, kind of sacrificed himself so Roman could get the win. Great stuff. Just great stuff all the way around. I loved it. 5 stars. Really solid show, as we've come to expect from these WWE PLEs. They're all just really solid. 5 matches. I love that. I really love the shorter form. I get that it doesn't give as many opportunities to everybody, but I'm sorry, like I can't watch 15 matches. I wish AEW would maybe take a note from WWE. I know they don't do as many pay-per-views, but man, it feels so long, and then you just end up not being able to remember everything otherwise. So 5 matches, loved it. As a whole, I'm gonna give this a 4.5. I think that the highs were absolutely high, particularly with the opening match and the closing match. The 3 matches in the middle, I think, were of varying success, but nothing was bad. Nothing was bad at all, and there was some really fun, entertaining stuff. So 4.5 total. Great stuff. I really enjoyed it. Keep it up, WWE. I'm really stoked to see, how things wrap up at the end of the year with Survivor Series, and beginning of next year with the Netflix debut. They're just cooking with gas, man. They're doing great. It's been super fun to watch. Now with The Rock back, we're kind of setting up WrestleMania for next year. It's gonna be good stuff. We got the retirement tour of John Cena. Great stuff. Great time to be a wrestling fan. So that's all I've got for you. Thanks so much for listening, and I will catch y'all in the next wrestling episode. All right, nerds, thanks so much for checking out the episode. If you're digging what I'm doing here, make sure you're following me on social media at nerds_opinions on both Instagram and X, and Nerds with Opinions on Facebook. If you're listening to this on Spotify, make sure that you are following me for one, but then you can rate this podcast out of 5 stars. 5 stars would be great. And then if you're on Apple Podcasts, you can rate and review. So if you can give me a positive rating and a positive review, it really helps me out. And if you're on any other platforms, I don't know, just make sure you're following me. That'd be great. As always, I'm your host, Matt Holben, and you have been listening to Nerds with Opinions.